Zoom. It's been a little glitchy today, so if I get kicked off, I'm coming back. I'm sorry if that happens. Okay. So we're going to start out by talking about the history of life on Earth. Like the video said, Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. How many zeros are in a billion? 9. Good. So when you look at this number and you're like, oh, 4.5 billion, like, okay, that is actually 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. It's a really long time, really long. Okay. So just to like kind of put that, it looks different when it has the zeros after it. Just want to say that. Life didn't even start existing until almost a billion years after Earth showed up. So in those billion years-ish, what do you think Earth was like? Give me some adjectives. Empty is good. Yes. What else, Liam?
Hot.
Hot is right. Yes. Very volcano-y, lots of eruptions, dark, ash in the sky, hot, dark, swirly, whirly gas, no atmosphere, doomsday, death. That's it. Okay. Yes.
Would we have been able to survive?
Absolutely not. 0%. There was no oxygen gas in the atmosphere, nothing to breathe. If you are familiar with like space, it's kind of Venus-y, kind of Mars-y, like just not great. Also, the land would have been rock, sand, dust, no plants, nothing green, desert, and rocks. That's it. It's hard to think about. That's what life would have been like. There was water. Yes, there was water, which is why, again, if you like are familiar with space exploration, you know that scientists are always looking for planets that have water, because water is like life to start for us here. Okay, so now let's talk about what showed up first. What showed up first are really simple prokaryotic bacteria. All right, so tell me what you know about prokaryotic things. One cell, unicellular. What else?
No nucleus.
Good, really simple and really small. I'm just gonna write small. Okay. Like I just said, life started in the water. That's where these things lived. So they were aquatic. Aquatic means lived in water. Yeah, like tiny, like this is microscopic. Like we just said, when we were talking about like Earth and not having any oxygen, what is the word for things that can survive and do respiration, but without oxygen? Do you remember it? True, they are tough, but that's not the science word. It's anaerobic. Is that coming back? Anaerobic equals can produce energy with no oxygen and no light, because you have to think about like it was probably pretty dark on Earth if there was volcanoes erupting all the time. So these things are like definitely really tough, like Toby said. Also, some ancestors of these things are still alive today. We call them extremophiles because they live in extreme environments. So I'll say like, I'm just gonna say that, extreme environments. And these are places like high pressure, high temperature, or low oxygen environments. They live in places like the hot springs in why can't I think of what that's called? The national park out west with the geysers. Yellowstone. There's like super hot springs in there, like so hot that if you like fell in, you would melt. There's been like stories of like dogs falling in, which is really sad. But bacteria can live there because they're extremophiles, which is pretty cool. Say it again.
Isn't the rainbow tree back here?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then this is going on for like a really long time. That just these guys are hanging out, they're doing their bacterial life. All of a sudden, something amazing starts to happen, which is photosynthesis. These things, excuse me, are still bacteria. So they're still all the things they were before, unicellular, small and simple, and aquatic. But they have developed the ability, and possibly because less volcanic eruptions started to happen over time. And then the sky cleared and then the sun was shining. Yeah,
Why plus? Okay.
I don't know the answer
Okay.
to that. Kaylee asked, why were there less volcanoes? And the answer, or like erupting, the answer is, I don't know, but probably related to like the tectonic plates of Earth, like shifting and like just things leveling out. Which even now, like the continents are still shifting just really slowly. That's what earthquakes are. So, but the answer is, I don't know. Okay, so all of a sudden you get photosynthesis happening. So these things use light to produce energy. Now, photosynthesis produces sugar, but it also produces oxygen, which we needed. So now I'm going to say that these things produce oxygen, guys. This means that all of a sudden, an atmosphere that didn't exist and had no oxygen in it does have oxygen now. Thanks, photosynthesis. Without it, we wouldn't exist because this is where the oxygen started to come from. To be clear, the oxygen did exist before, it just wasn't in a usable, breathable form. It was in the form of like other compounds and also water, which is what happens in photosynthesis. Water is converted to oxygen. Hooray! I'm just going to make a note also that these are called cyanobacteria because it's going to be on one of the images that I show you in just a second. And they still exist today too. They're still hanging out. So now, the great news is because we have oxygen, there can start to be aerobic bacteria. Remember, aerobic means uses oxygen. So these guys use oxygen to make energy way more efficiently than before, which means they can do more things. They can start to become bigger cells. They can start to like just be better. They're just better. Okay, yeah.
If there's like the better way of getting energy, like with the aerobic, why are there still the other one? With the photosynthesis?
Because they have like carved out sort of a niche where they thrive and nothing else does. Like these aerobic or anaerobic ones up here, they can live in places that nothing else can live. And that's why they still are alive. Because nothing has like booted them out of their space. Not right. Nothing that lives there is better than them because nothing else lives there. It's like too acidic or too dark or too little oxygen or like a plethora of possible things. But nothing has kicked them out. So they're chilling. Probably forever. Okay. So aerobic bacteria, I just wanted to say that they still live in the ocean. They have not left the water. and they're still pretty simple, and they're still small. And then all the things that we've talked about so far are unicellular. So far, we have not achieved anything that is more than one cell big. And at this point, life has been happening for a really long time. This is like slow. Okay. But then the craziest thing ever is going to happen. And we're going to go over here and we're going to look at this picture. All right. So now it's time for eukaryotic cells, which is what you have, to show up. Here's how they show up. First of all, you have this purple bacteria. It says ancestral prokaryote. That's a bacteria. It happens to be pretty large. Good for it. It's chilling. Something happens in its DNA that changes its gene expression, changes its phenotype. So because it got this like random mutation situation, this membrane of the cell starts to fold and create like extra waviness inside the cell. Eventually, this extra waviness, what does it look like? Does anyone know? It's a cell part. Yeah.
Nucleolus?
No, good guess though. The nucleus does happen here because these membranes start to pinch off and form a circle. These foldy ones become the endoplasmic reticulum, the ER. Those like foldy things inside the cell, right? So now, just because of DNA mutations, we've created membrane folds, nucleus, ER, some cool things. But it gets crazier because this bacteria is hungry, this purple one. It's like, I'm going to eat some smaller bacteria. It goes up to this orange one. This one's aerobic. That means it's really good at making energy. It eats it. Yum. But it doesn't digest it. For some reason, that is unknown. It doesn't break it down. And instead, it's almost like this purple bacteria is like, hey, you can live inside my cell wall and no one else will eat you and you can just chill here. And the orange one is like, okay, and like, I'm really good at making energy. So like, I'll make energy for you. And they're like, hooray, friendship. And they stay together forever and they like reproduce together and they like pass down the same stuff and they're like happy forever. And then you have this cell, which now what are the orange things? They make energy.
Mitochondria?
They're mitochondria because this thing didn't digest it. And now we have mitochondria because of that. The same thing with chloroplast. This one up here is a chloroplast. Same situation. They're just chilling. It's called symbiosis because they're working together and they're friends. And it's delightful. Now you're probably like, how do you know that? How I know is mitochondria have their own DNA. It's different from yours. It's their own thing. It's because they used to be their own thing. They had their own stuff. They reproduce on their own. They don't do mitosis. They do like binary fission like bacteria do. They like split. And they have two membranes. Why do they have two membranes? Because they had their own, it's orange, and then they got eaten and the cell pinched off another membrane. Now they have two. To this day, they still have two. Wow, amazing, evolution. So that is called endosymbiosis. And that's what we're gonna write down. Endosymbiosis. Endo means in, symbiosis means working together. So what this means is that a large cell engulfed a smaller, efficient bacteria, smaller bacteria lived inside of larger one, and that became mitochondria. And also chloroplasts, same deal. Chloroplasts have their own DNA too. Worth it to mention that these things are still aquatic. They're slightly more complex, but they still live in the water. They're also still unicellular. Okay, so an example of something like this that's still alive is an amoeba, which is like a blobby thing with organelles and a nucleus that has to live in the water. You can't live outside of the water. So after that exciting moment, eukaryotic cells are like way more powerful now because they have harnessed the skills of other smaller bacteria, which means that they can start to work together. So this is cells combine to form tissues, organs, and organ systems. And now you have the move to land for some animals. If something lives on land, what do you call it?
Terrestrial?
Good, terrestrial. And these are all the things that you think of as like living things, plants, animals, and also fungi, like mushrooms. And that is the order of how living things showed up on Earth. Woohoo! But now, probably you're so intrigued and you're like, but why? But how do you know? Prove it. I will prove it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go down here to evidence for evolution. And at this moment, I'm going to take a moment to describe to you the situation with evolution, because it tends to be like a pretty hot topic for a lot of people. Evolution in science is just the theory that things change over time. Now, you might have heard like evolution is just a theory. So like, whatever. Theories in science are different than theories in English. In English, if you're like, I have a theory about that, you're like, I have a guess, or like, I have a hypothesis, if you're going to use a science word. In science, if you're like, I have a theory, it's like, I have done a million billion experiments on this, and I know that it's true because all of these facts support it. Like, for example, gravity is a theory. It's definitely real. So in science, evolution is accepted as definitely real because there's a lot of different things that support it. The Catholic Church accepts evolution too. It says that God like drives evolutionary changes, but like evolution is, it happened and it is real. At the same time, I do want to just mention that it's not my job to tell you what to believe or tell you that you have to believe something. It's just my job to teach you science. So take what you want, leave what you don't. Here we go on this adventure of evolution. All right, so all that said, evidence for evolution comes from many different sciences. I'm going to give you the first one because you can already see it. It's called embryology, which is studying embryos. Anyone want to guess another one? A science that could support evolution? Or something that could support evolution? Biology? Is that what you said? Yes. I'm going to be a little more specific. I'm going to say biochemistry, which is like DNA sequences.
I'm blanking on the word, but like finding like fossils and stuff like that.
Yes. Number 3, fossils, which if it's like a science is called paleontology. And then there's one more that we're going to talk about today. There are a lot more, but we're going to talk about one more. Does anyone know or want to guess? It's anatomy, which means like comparing the bodies of organisms. Again, there are more, but these are the main ones and the ones we're going to talk about. Okay, now we're going to have some fun. So come down here, look at embryology. We're going to do this one first because it's my favorite. Embryology is comparing early embryos of different animals. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at this image, and if it's not showing up on yours, you can look on mine. And you're going to try to guess which animals these are. Now, as a guide to this image, this is showing 3 stages of development for each of these animals. There's 8 animals shown. So this is the really early stage of development. This is in the middle. This is right when they're about to be born or hatch out of an egg. It's all different ones, so it's different for all of them. So when you're trying to guess, what I would recommend is looking at these ones, because these are the closest to birth, okay? If you look at these, it's gonna be really hard to figure it out, like maybe impossible. So look at this row here, see if you can figure out which animal is which. Take a moment to guess. You can talk while you guess if you want to. Ready for the answers? Not yet. Yeah. Okay, what do you think about number 1? Go ahead, Liam.
Fish.
Fish is right. I don't know what kind of fish it is, but it's a fish. Okay. All right, what about number 2? Newt is a good guess. What do you have?
Lizard.
What do you have?
I was gonna say lizard.
Okay, it's a salamander. Specifically, and one person got this last period, it's an axolotl, which is a salamander that has external gills. They're really cute little pink salamanders. Yeah.
They're only in one place in the world.
Yeah, and some people keep them as pets.
They keep it, they're like all white, they're like,
Really?
it's been like every year they die.
Oh, Jose saying they're about to go extinct.
They just die because like, I think all pollution.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Because they breathe through their skin, so.
But there's only animal that can like regenerate.
Sweet. They're like super cute too. They're pink. They're really cute. Yeah, the black ones are ugly. Okay, guys, next one. What'd you get?
Turtle.
Turtle's right. See its little shell? It's a turtle. Okay, what about the next one? Chicken's a good guess. Bird, it's a bird. You guys can just yell them. You don't have to raise your hands so that everyone can yell.
Are chickens birds?
Yes, they are. They're just not very good at flying. Can chickens fly?
No. They're too foul.
Turkeys are birds. too.
Yes, turkeys are birds.
They can get on pretty high.
Turkeys can fly,
If you go back in history, chickens were like, but like chickens nowadays can't.
domesticated ones.
I don't think we want chickens to be able to fly. Sound like, you know,
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, what's this?
Pig.
Pig is right. See its curly little tail? All right, these next 3 are hard. Anyone get this one?
Dog.
Good guess, no.
Monkey.
Good guess, no. No other guesses?
Dog.
It's a cow.
Why California next one?
Okay, the next one, any guesses about that one?
Is it a dog?
Horse?
Not a dog, not a horse,
Monkeys?
not a sheep, but that's a good guess.
Is it a monkey?
Not a monkey. It's a rabbit.
Oh,
These are its ears. They just haven't popped up yet, but they have little ears. Okay, who's this?
Human.
It's you. It's a human. Okay, so guys, I'm about to explode your mind with a few things about this. So now go back up. We're gonna look at the human one of the first stage of development. So in your first days of life, this is what you looked like. Okay, this is also microscopic, but this is what you looked like. You had some interesting characteristics. What do you think are these?
cute.
Yeah, these are gills. You had them, guys. You had gills. So what I want you to think about is, why did you have gills? Where did you live? Yeah, in the water. You lived in a watery environment, also known as your mother. Right? Like, it wasn't like a dry place there. You had gills to breathe, to filter out the oxygen. Okay, now let's look at this. So this is like the second stage of development. What are these?
Hands and feet.
Yep, these are called limb buds, which eventually become your hands and your feet. And then what else do you have that's a little bit like,
What's that weird thing on
here,
the lumpy thing?
this,
You have a tail.
No, like the lumpy thing.
this,
Yes, that.
this eventually becomes like your brain.
Oh,
You have a tail.
Yeah, that's what I wanted you to see, is you have a tail. Eventually, before you're born, your tail dies. The cells one by one like disintegrate and die. It's called apoptosis. We talked about it like during mitosis.
Has there been like people that like just stick one?
No, it doesn't happen. But another thing that does apoptosis is the webbing between your finger, like you have webbing between your fingers when you're developing, and the webbing dies. And some people it doesn't, and they like surgically have it cut out, usually when they're baby. But okay, so then eventually you develop into this little guy or gal, and you're born. Probably you don't look like this when you're born unless you were really premature, like I was. I looked like that. I was an alien baby. I was only 3 pounds. But there you go. Isn't that crazy? Okay, now the other thing I want to look at is this. What can you say about all of these things?
Similar.
Yeah, they look really almost the same, right? So like the way that you develop and the way that a fish develops and a turtle and a bird and a pig are really, really similar. So that's how this supports evolution. Because if you were just like gonna design a developing human and you were gonna design a developing fish, would you design them the same? No, I would not. So what it suggests is that there was a common ancestor behind all of these things that probably looked something like this, that like led to, and small genetic changes led to all the changes that we have, which is crazy. So what I'm going to say over here is supports evolution because all of these animals develop very similarly, which supports that there's an ancestor that is common to them all. And one thing that I want to say is all of these are vertebrate animals. They all have a spinal cord and a backbone. For animals that are not vertebrates, it's different. They're less closely related. So, all right, next thing we're going to talk about is equally cool. It's anatomy. So come over here. Anatomy is a fancy way to say comparing body structures. We're going to talk about 2 types, homologous and analogous. And we're gonna start with homologous. So for a moment, I'm gonna give you a tour of your arm. So if you look at your arm, you have a large bone here. This is your humerus. And then you have two bones in this middle part of your arm, the radius and the ulna. If you move your arm like this and you can feel the radius moving around. It radiates, that's why it's called that. It connects to your thumb side.
You now have 5 minutes to get to your first class.
Okay, then in your wrists, you have bones called carpals. If you you can feel that there's actually different ones in there. In your hand, these bones are your metacarpals. And then your fingers are called phalanges. And actually your toes are called phalanges too. So you have 20 phalanges, which is a funner name than fingers, I think. All right, so now look at these. These are other mammals and their arms. All of their arms are used for different things than our arms are for. Cats are for walking, whales are for swimming, bats are for flying. But they all have the same structure, just different sizes, stretched out or shrunk down. So cats have pretty similar, actually, to us, really small wrists, phalanges, metacarpals, longer radius than we have, and then a humerus. Whales, super long phalanges, really long fingers, tiny wrist, tiny arm bones, tiny humerus. Bats, everything really long, really skinny, but it's still the same numbers of bones. This is crazy because if you were going to design a whale flipper, would you put all these strange bones here? No. No, why would you do that? You would put like maybe one bone in there or something. But this is because they all have a common ancestor, like really close related to them, and DNA mutations have just changed the sizes of the bones. Yeah.
I don't know if this is like relevant. What's the deal with like the?
Yeah, what is the deal with thumbs? Thumbs are weird. So in some of the animals, like the cat, I think does have a fifth phalange here. Like this is a thumb, but it's not a thumb. Like it's not opposable, which is what ours is, like a fifth digit. So like they have a fifth digit, and so do bats. Like this is a thumb, but it's not functional.
Is it one of those like wrong things, like the phalanges, metacarpals? Like,
Yeah, your thumb is a phalange.
okay.
Yeah, but see, like whales, they don't even have one. Thumbs are weird. I don't know, like all the stuff
So
about
whales
them.
only have 4 fingers,
Yeah, whales have 4 phalanges.
but they have 5 metacarpals?
They sure do,
That's
which suggests that there in the past was another phalange. It's not there anymore. Okay, so homologous structures are same structure, like same layout. Different function. These are homologous. All these in this picture. Do you think homologous structures support a common ancestor or not? Yes. Support a common. Jose, what's going on? Okay. You might need to restart. Okay. Now let's talk about analogous. So analogous structures are basically just the opposite of homologous. What this means is that they have a different structure or layout, but they have the same function. Can anyone think of this, of two animals that have a structure that has the same function, but like they look super different? Exactly. Toby said like a fly's wings and a bat's wings. They're both for flying, but they're really different looking and like they're just different. So that's a really good example. Insect wing and a bird wing or bat. Also like a fish's fin and a whale's flipper, like same function, but look really different. Do you think these support a recent common ancestor? No, not really, because they look really different. So these do not support a recent common ancestor. There still is a common ancestor, but it's not super recent.
At this time, all students should be in their next period class. At this time,
Okay, now one more crazy anatomy thing is vestigial structures. Anyone know what they are? What that means? No? Yeah.
Aren't they things that like aren't in use anymore, they're like still there?
Yes, so they're organs that have no purpose anymore, but they did in the ancestors. So humans have 3 big ones.
Yes. Like,
What is that?
there's like something on your list that, like.
Oh, yeah,
you
some
do this
people
and
have
that.
them, some people
I'm not familiar with that one, but I'm not telling you you're wrong, because you might be right. Liam?
The appendix.
Appendix is the most popular example, appendix. So we don't use our appendix for anything. There's some like hypotheses that the appendix used to be used to like break down like things that your stomach couldn't break down very well, like sticks, rocks, bones, hair, teeth, like things that like animals eat. But obviously we don't use that anymore. Any other ideas, examples? There's 2 more that humans have.
I don't know, tonsils maybe?
Tonsils is a good guess. I think they do have a function. Like another person said that too, and I put it on there as like tonsils question mark, because I'm not really sure, so I'll do that here too. I think they're supposed to help your immune system function, but they're not necessary. Like you don't need them. Like your gallbladder does something, but you don't need it. Also wisdom teeth, which some of you probably have, and some of you probably don't even have. But wisdom teeth are left over from ancestors who had really, really, really big mouths. And they had space for wisdom teeth, and they also ate things that were really tough and required a lot of chewing.
I saw something that says the tonsils are the immune system's first line of defense against bacteria and viruses that enter.
Okay, so they do still have a function, but you can live without them. So I'll take them off. The last one for humans is your tailbone. You have a tailbone, but you have no tail. So you don't need one, but you still have one. And then also my favorite example ever is in whales. Whales have a pelvis. What is a pelvis for?
Yep.
Yeah, attaching to your legs. Do whales have legs? No, they sure don't, but they do have a pelvis. So I'm going to show you this picture. It's on mine, but it's not on yours. This is the evolution of whales, the ancestors of them. So the hypothesis is that mammals evolved first on land. All the mammals, like their ancestor was a land creature. It probably looked like a rodent-y, large rodent-y sort of thing. So here's like the furthest ancestor of a whale. It probably was like a land mammal that spent a lot of time near the water. And then over many generations, this is a fossil. That's why it has like a lot of missing bones, because it's an incomplete fossil. But there was this thing. Then there was this thing. So we're getting more like alligator-y here, but not a reptile. Like it still would have been a mammal with fur and all that. Okay. Then here, so you can see this thing has little bitty tiny legs. Would these legs have been functional? No, they would have been vestigial for this animal. Like they wouldn't have worked. And then finally you have a whale, which look at its little tiny pelvis. Look at those little bones in there floating around. That's crazy, right? That is nuts. there you go. Yeah, Liam, go
Are
ahead.
the giant bones the jaw?
Yes, yeah. This is the jaw. Yep. Crazy times. So that's how this supports a common ancestor, because like if you were creating a whale, would you put a pelvis in it? No, you would not. Why? But it has one because it evolved from a land animal a long time ago, which is nuts. Okay, there's also some people, I'm just going to tell you this, that believe in mermaids for this reason. Like they believe there were some primates that like returned to the water, like whales, and like became mer people. It's not real, but it's called the aquatic ape hypothesis. Super interesting. Alrighty. Guys, we're gonna fly through fossils now because you've all learned about them before. So we're gonna go fast, 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 unless you stop me and tell me you're confused. All right, fossils are preserved remains. One thing that's important for me to tell you is that the fossil record, which is all the fossils we have, is incomplete. What does that mean? Yeah, but like why? Yeah, so number one, like not everything fossilizes. And also, not everything has been discovered. But the fossil record is really important for helping us find links between existing animals, like the hippo and the whale. Some of those ones I was just showing you are extinct, they don't exist anymore. But because we have fossils, they're like the missing piece of the puzzle that's like, oh, this connected these things. Because evolution is not like a hippo became a whale. It's like there was a thing that was between a hippo and a whale. And then like the hippo population changed into hippos and the whale population changed into whales. Like there's something in the middle of every species that exists now. But the fossil record helps us find them. To be like, oh, that thing is part lizard, part bird. It's the link, which is nice. Okay, 2 ways to tell the age of a fossil: absolute dating and relative dating. Which one tells you its exact age?
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. Absolute. Exact age. This uses carbon dating, which if you've heard of that is like finding the half-life and telling you like this was 86.35 million years old. And it will tell you straight up how old it was. Relative dating means an approximate age. And it uses rock layers. Okay. It also can use index fossils. Does anyone know or remember what an index fossil is? Flashback to like 8th grade probs. No? Okay, an index fossil is a fossil with a known age. So usually it's an organism that didn't live for very long, and scientists know that. The best example is trilobites, which are like giant horseshoe crab looking things that only lived for like a few thousand years. So if you find a trilobite fossil and a new fossil in the same layer, then you can be like, oh, this is probably 36,000 years old. Yeah, which is nice. Otherwise, you use law of superposition, which tells you oldest rocks are at the bottom of rock layers. So if we look at this, D is lava. Which rock layer is the oldest?
The one above the lava?
The one below the lava. A is the oldest because it's on the bottom, right?
It's ABD.
Oh, I thought.
Yeah.
I thought it meant like lava's like below everything.
Oh, no, no, no. D is this colored in thing.
Okay.
Okay, so A is the oldest, and then B, and then D, which I'll explain that in a second. And then C is the most recent. C is the youngest. All the little shapes in there, they represent fossils. So what you have is in layer A, you have some stars and some squares that lived then, they're fossilized. Then you had B, some curlies and some stars lived then, they fossilized. Then you had some kind of crazy volcanic eruption, lava flow, cuts through B, cuts through A, cuts through because it's really, 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 really hot. Why are there no fossils in D? Because it's really, 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 really hot. So it burnt up anything that was in there. No fossils. This is another reason the fossil record's incomplete, because if there's a volcano, if there's an asteroid, if there's something crazy, there's no fossils of that. There's only fossils in sedimentary rock, which means like things laid undisturbed for a really long time, which is not always happening. It's not usually happening. So there you go for that. Just going to make a note here that says no fossils unless sedimentary rock. Alrighty, time has come for our last section. It's going to be short. It's biochemistry. Biochemistry is using DNA sequencing to look for genetic similarities between organisms. This is a pretty new technology, like I told you in the biotech unit, but it has really changed evolution and classification and how we know things are related. Because, for example, humans and cats, how much DNA do you think they share? No guesses? %90 of the same DNA code. So all the differences between you and a cat are because of 10% of your DNA being different from theirs. The rest is the same. Humans and bananas, how much do they share? No guesses? 50. You're half the same in terms of your genetic code as a banana. And finally, how much DNA do you think all humans share? Go ahead, Liam.
99%.
Good, 99.9% of the same DNA code. So all of the differences that exist between you and your friends and you and people you've never met is 0.1% of your DNA being different than theirs. So the moral of that story is racism is stupid because you're the same. All of you are the same. Congratulations. Leah,
Are like all bananas 99.9% of the same DNA?
all bananas are 100% of the same DNA. They are genetically identical. Every banana you've ever eaten is a twin of every other banana you've ever eaten. And that's why bananas are very susceptible to disease.
That's just for bananas? or
Yes.
like for-
That is for modern bananas because we have farmed them that way, which is a criticism of modern agriculture because it makes them very susceptible to disease. Your grandparents ate a different species of banana than you eat. We eat Cavendish bananas and they ate Gros Michel bananas, and their bananas were sweeter and larger than our bananas. But their bananas went extinct because of a disease, because they were all the same. So now we eat Cavendish bananas instead. Yes,
So was there like a few years in between when there was just no bananas at all?
I think probably. I don't know that for sure, but I think probably. Also, similar crops are coffee and cocoa that are genetically completely identical to each other that are like at large risk. And there's actually a story. I read a book about this, which is why I like know all this stuff. But there's a story about a Brazilian cocoa farmer who basically like didn't agree politically with like what was happening in Brazil. And then someone came to his cocoa fields and tied literally with string an infected cocoa branch with like a pathogen onto his cocoa trees, and all the cocoa died. All his cocoa died. It is a crazy story. So now, because of the Brazil like cocoa pandemic, almost all chocolate that we eat is from Africa. Dun, dun, dun. Interesting. Okay, everyone, great job today. That was tons and tons of new information. There is no homework. If you want to do the timeline, it's bonus. It's in OneNote. And I will see you on tomorrow for content day. And that's it. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
9.
And it's like homework.
Yeah, only if you want to do it though. I also don't have a due date for that. It's just like, if you want to do it, do it.
Other than that, we don't.
Nope. And we have 15 minutes today. I did your class a lot faster than my other classes. I think because I've done it 4 times, so I'm like,